Hey Abel, how's it going, man? Congratulations on winning this month's 11-second club competition. No easy feat. You should definitely be proud of yourself there. My name is Nick Bruno. I'm a supervising animator at Blue Sky Studios, currently supervising Peanuts. If that will be the official title, I'm not so sure. I think it's Peanuts, the movie. Either way, go see it. And I am going to talk to you about your assignment. All right, but first let's play it so everyone who's watching this can see it again.
This device isn't a spaceship. It's a time machine. It takes us to a place where we ache to go again.
That's deep, man. That's really deep. There's a couple things I want to commend you on right away. One, a unique character. Cool. It's, I feel like we see so many of the same character over and over and over and over again when we do our real reviews. So it's nice to see something fresh and original. So that's really cool. Also, really simple setup here. It's not totally flooded with a bunch of stuff. We just have our little alien guy here, and we have, I'm guessing this is some space terrain, and I think this is a tape deck, right? Maybe I'm dating myself. Maybe I'm not. If it's not a tape deck, then that needs to be more clear what that is. But it's pretty cool. Like, here's what I got out of it, and maybe I'm going to sound like a nut job, but the whole line, he's talking about it being a time machine, right? And I think it's neat that you decided to use a tape deck because it does sort of bring you back to that time if you're old enough to know what that is. And I'm guessing you are. So that's really cool. So I also want to say that I feel like the level of the animation is pretty good. You definitely show that you're comfortable posing and splining stuff. So it seems like you got some good chops, even in terms of the texturing and the modeling, all the little bits. Pretty cool. So I don't want to bore you with like I guess a dumb critique, right? So what I would do is what I'd like to do is talk to you about, I think, the things that could be infused in this to make this feel more like professional quality. And take that with a grain of salt, because coming from me, if you know me, I'm the least professional person there is. But I'm going to give you my insight to all the things that I think I would have tried to bring to this assignment had it been mine, or things that if you're looking to push this and make it better, you could do. But honestly, I usually leave my old assignments behind and just start doing new ones. So let's get into it, all right? So what I'm going to talk about is, I'm going to talk a little bit about the storytelling aspects, get into some staging and acting, and then mechanics, okay? So first off, talking about the staging, like I said, I'm pretty sure this is a tape deck player, but if I'm wrong, there's an issue there. But I think there's, I think there's things that you could do to make this a little bit more clear. Even just like little icons of the play, stop, pause, and rewind buttons, like things like that can clue you in to, is that definitely what this is? And can equally look like symbols on some ancient artifact as well. Like, I'm sure if archaeologists thousands and thousands of years from now discovered one of these things, they'd be like, what does this symbol mean? So I don't think it'd be totally out of context to put that in there. I was a little bit confused as well by the fact that it's eclipsed behind that. It feels like it's just behind rather than buried in. So, you know, I know you're throwing this stuff together really quick and it's not that important, but you know, perhaps even taking a pass at some point to just feel like this is embedded in to something, you know, feeling a little bit of the perspective of this getting into that, I think would help sell that. It would help sell that. Yeah. So the other thing that, you know, just really quick with staging, and I don't mean to get into staging so early, but, you know, when I'm thinking of these elements, I'm also thinking of my animation, like when I'm thinking of the staging of these objects in relation to what my acting and my plans are. It seems like because of where this is, it got us into a couple of awkward poses. Like this is awkward where I'm not so sure that he's kneeling, but he's got a really extended arm here. So your character proportions to get you down on one knee, have your hand here, and feel natural. It's, you know, it may not have been the best place for that. Maybe it's just the pose. But it's things that, like, when I'm setting up something for myself and I'm thinking about my acting, I'm equally trying to think of solid acting, good poses that will work with my set. And if I need to tweak the set a little bit to get more out of those poses, I will, so that I don't find myself in some awkward poses. Okay. But that's all I really want to talk about for the staging, although I'm lying. There's two other really big things, you know, in terms of posing for staging. Like you could have had this in still a little bit more, right? These are like not huge notes per se. I'll get into more nitty-gritty stuff. But to me, the biggest one is you develop this really cool character. Maybe you didn't make the character, but whatever, you're using it. But with all your posing and all your acting, it took me a little bit to really realize that he had 3 eyes. Now, again, I could be dumb, completely dumb. But most of the time, we only see the 2. We see these 2. That one's kind of hidden. Right? Here we only really see 1 because that one's hidden. That's in shadow. And then that one's hidden, right? So what's the issue with that? Well, it's not a huge issue, but you have something that makes this character really unique, and we're not utilizing it as much as we can. So I personally, like, whenever I'm playing with the character, I'm always thinking of, you know, what is their focus feature? You know, if it's these giant eyes and this long snout. So I want to make sure you can always see these 2 big eyes, those 2 big tennis ball eyes and a wiffle ball bat nose in any pose that I'm doing, so that you can get the most out of what makes that character unique. In this case, I would have tried to, even, you know, when we're looking at this pose here, I would have tried to just a slight rotate of the head could have brought that far eye around just a little bit more, and then I really could have had all 3 of these eyes converge down to that thing he's looking at. Okay? So for me, that's his focal feature, and I would have tried to get more out of it, especially because of the eyes. They're the most important thing, right? Okay. So that's, yeah, let's finish staging. So in terms of the storytelling, I want to listen to this again.
This device isn't a spaceship. It's a time machine. It takes us to a place where we ache to go again.
Okay. So he's talking about how it's a time machine and it's taking us to a place that we ache to go again. And, you know, looking at some of the description stuff that you had on the 11 Second Club site, you know, you have this really cool description of the shot saying it's a little alien that wants to return to his destroyed planet, but how? And for me, there is an interesting story there in your little log line, and I didn't necessarily get that when I watched it. Okay. I didn't get a feeling that he was lost. I didn't get a feeling that he was longing for home. It wasn't until, in fact, I read that this made a little more sense. Like, that's his home, right? But I guess what I was missing from this is a feeling like this guy is lost through his acting, right? And there's a little bit of, you know, giving up. Like, this time machine isn't necessarily getting him home either. So I feel like in terms of the character, I would have liked to see a build in, you know, the breaking down of what's happening, him putting this together. It's like, this is a time machine, this isn't a spaceship, so this isn't going to get me home. And then that sense of longing when he looks at it, and it's, you know, is he saying goodbye? Is he losing hope here? I think those are things that we could have brought to it to sell what you sold me on in that one sentence. Okay? Because I think what you're going for is a great story. I think do your acting, if we sold that, that would be good. Because I really like the depth of the whole cassette player thing being a time device. So let's talk about your acting. Overall, what I was feeling like we could do better in here is the overall tone and consistency in the acting. So when we listen to that line, it really sounds like somebody who is, you know, really their mind is turning in here. They're really thinking about a lot of things. You know, this isn't that, it's this, and you know, it sounds very deep, very thoughtful. And when if I turn the volume off, okay, and I play this, hopefully there's no volume playing right now. When we watch this, we see a character that gets excited, right? He like slams the button, and then he turns off this thing and he looks up. Okay, tonally, because you have some really like sharp, fun moves, some excited moves like right there and there, I'm not getting that feeling, that melancholy tone, like he's missing home. Okay, so I was feeling like the amount of movement and the energy in this shot was not fitting tonally for what the line read was. It's little things like that that may not necessarily like lose your audience, but you feel that disconnect and you can risk losing your audience there. Okay. Also thinking about consistency, we have him here. He feels like he's in deep thought. In terms of your animation punctuation, you make big emphasis here of, I know. Okay? So it feels like, if we're just reading the body language here, he's like, what is this thing? I'm not so sure. Maybe it's, I know. Right? And then he goes for what his idea is. That's fine. Okay? But here's where the inconsistency comes in. If he's not so sure what it is, and he has the idea of what it may be, he's certainly going to see and hang around for what this thing does. Watching this, after he pushes the button, he gets into more of a thoughtful beat, and then he turns away from it. Okay? I don't feel like he pushes that button and he doesn't, you know, hang around to see what it's going to do. It's not like, push, what is it going to do? Wow, look at all of it. And then from there, get into his internal thing and step away. It feels like he's like, I know, maybe it'll do this. Presses the button, it's like, maybe if. It seems like his mind just completely shifted gears there. So that's where I feel like it's inconsistent. So I would either, you know, you could play it two ways. You could play it where he doesn't know what this thing is, and when he pushes the button, there has to be this sense of, like, what is it going to do? Draw up the sense of wonder, push the button, and get ready for what it's going to do, and then maybe, like, even when it started activating, you would turn it right back off, and then he can go about his way. Or you can be excited, whatever, but you maintain the consistency of, I've never seen this thing before. Or, the other way you can handle it is, he's already pressed this 1,000 times. He landed on this ship, he's trying to find his way home, and it's just like, this isn't what I was hoping it would be. This is just a stupid thing that just plays music, click, done. Like, what am I going to do? You keep it internal. There's no, this isn't as special to him or new. It's more just like, this stupid thing doesn't work. Okay? And I feel like tonally that fits more for what this is. So a simple tweak here of how he reacts, not being so sharp and not being so zippy to hear, can really help sell the tone of your shot. So, turning the volume back up, here's an idea of how I might have played it. So let's just watch this again.
This device isn't a spaceship. It's a time machine.
Okay. I think I would have been a little bit more Jeff Goldblum about it and played it more the, you know, super scientific, like, internal, really mind cranking again. It's like this device is not what I thought it was. It's just a time machine. Click, press the button. But at the same time, slowly get up. It's just like you're down on your knees. So we come into this shot where the character has already sort of like lost hope. You know, like the shots preceding this where he was hopeful about this is going to get me home. No, so we come in and it's all despair, and it's just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I thought this thing was going to get me home. And he's just getting up, and it's just, so it's like, instead of being zippy with your mechanics, you're showing some real physicality, like getting back up, kind of kicking this thing, like how you push that button can tell you how you feel about it. It's like, this is a piece of junk, okay? And then go about the rest of your acting there. Okay?
It's a time machine. It takes us to...
So, on...
This device isn't a spaceship.
Okay. You have this device isn't a spaceship. Where's the breathing? Breathing is another thing that's super important for a life of a character. You know, it helps sell the despair here. It's like this thing, you know, just feels the wind leave his lungs, like metaphorically the wind has left his sails. Like, this device isn't a spaceship. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Okay? But that's also where you start to break down the internal stuff. So it's all about the eyes, which is a great place at the very beginning of your shot to stage for those eyes. So whatever that pose is, you want to see all of them clearly and see them really calculating internally what's going to happen next. I don't know what to do. I'm searching for answers, okay?
It's a time machine.
Okay. So during that pause, that's where I'd start to, that's where you have like that sharp realization. That's where I'd be doing the, like, getting back up, and how he gets up, he can kind of turn his back on it a little bit, looking for another answer. So when it's like, so when he says it's a time machine, that's where I might look back and just, you know, press the button. It's just like, as if he's saying, see? Like, maybe there's a little bit of hope, like maybe it'll work this time, but it's just like, it's just a stupid iPhone, right? Click it on, click it off, throw it off over your shoulder. Okay? And then
takes us to a place.
So like once he pushes the button, you can let that thing play and basically have the character not do much at all. But for him, it's just like his internal dialogue, and I like to write out what he's actually saying and act out those lines. It might just be like, what am I going to do? And it could be just like a solo acting, like, what am I going to do? But it calms the character down. It allows you to watch the tape deck sort of move, so we know that it's definitely a tape deck, and then it stops on its own. And then
To a place where we ache to go again.
And then from there, he's saying a lot of lines, but really he's saying it's like, I just want to go home. Okay? So from there, you say it twice in your actions. You look up at the stars. Okay, that's where I want to go. And you press this little button and this ball pops out. Honestly, if you ask me, looking up at the stars is the one that I connect more with this home. Alright? It also, suggests belief in maybe a higher being. Not that that's important to the shot, but I think it's something that we, the audience, may empathize more with. Like, I'm lost out in this huge galaxy. Right? I'm alone. Versus, hey, my watch does this amazing thing. Okay? But either way, you say the same thing twice. And in animation, you want to try to be as simple, clear, and effective as you can, so just say it once. Okay? Okay. Cool. Now, talking a little bit more about some of the animation details. One thing that I think was super overlooked was just the facial expressions. Again, if I turn the volume off and we watch this, very first frame, he looks kind of angry, right? I could see those brows dipping down and in. He's looking at it through the, the furrow of that brow there. I could see that far eye. I can kind of see that far eye. But either way, I get that down and in look there on the eyes. So he's angry, right? Then here he seems sort of positive, alert, back to maybe inquisitive. Here I don't know how he feels, a little indifferent. Here he feels excited. I see him, he definitely brightened up there, has a big smile. But it seems like he maintains that smile, or the feeling of that smile, throughout. Now this expression here to me doesn't seem like a guy who misses home, like, right? It seems like somebody who's positive and cheery, like, look at the stars tonight. If I was stranded on the moon, well, I'd probably be looking down, but if I was stranded in space and looking out for home, I would just, my mouth would have no expression. But my eyes would say, like, I'm scared, I'm worried. Again, you're the focal feature that I think he really could have used a lot, should have been used a lot, to really help sell some of those emotions. Because when I'm going through saying that he looks happy and cheery there, happy and cheery through most of this stuff, and I play the volume again, he's not.
This device isn't a spaceship. It's a time machine. It takes us to a place where we ache to go again.
Okay. It's just a guy lost in thought, really. So I feel like that you could have got a lot more read to what the emotions are by pushing those facial expressions, and I think without clarifying that, you lose a lot of the appeal there. Okay. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is, the overall style of motion is very, very pose-to-posey. You definitely get a sense of, this pose, okay, transition to next pose really quick, a little bit in that pose, next pose, ready, next pose, next pose. All right, I can feel the start and stop of, okay, we're leaving this pose and now we're entering pose B. And we're leaving pose B and now we're entering pose C. I don't think that's a total bad thing. I think it's only bad when you don't have variety in your shots. So when everything transitions and moves from one to another in the same manner, it loses like an organic feel to it. So what I would have tried to do, I think it's good in here that you're acting within one pose. Like this is just a subset of that pose, basically. It's your crunch, your squash version of that. In the emotion, when I was talking about tonally, if he was more getting up, rather than doing a quick, sharp transition, we would have got a better sense of the acting, we got a better sense of the weight of the character, and we would have forgotten that we were so much like leaving this pose, because we would have not get lost in the mechanics, we'd be lost in his thought process. But before you know it, we'd be in a new pose, we wouldn't even realize that we've arrived there. Okay, so I'm always trying to find what is the balance. What are those poses that I want to quickly make sure that it's strong and emphasized in my pose-to-pose kind of transition. But then some of the poses, I may want to sort of meander and act, and the next thing you know, I'm leaning on the arm of my chair from a very standard, confident position, right? So I would find that variety in there. Okay. Because otherwise, if everything feels so pose to pose, what it makes me feel like is that, especially because the tone of this isn't quick, sharp, and energetic, it makes me feel like you're maybe afraid to do those mechanics, or maybe because of time, and it is the 11-second club, so you had to do it really quick. May have been very limited in what you've been able to do there, but like those are some things that I think are important that you fight for. Okay. All right. So lastly, getting into more of like the little polishy things, I get a strong sense of when things are in IK, the locks and pops. Right from the very get-go, this arm, a couple frames in, whenever you could see the character starting to move, and then bam, it just pops right there. You don't want that. You don't want that at all. Me personally, the whole IK thing is a problem because it can lock out, but in the graph editor, your curve can keep going, right? So you may look at your curves and you may be blinded by the fact that this thing's still moving, but it only until it enters that sort of like that area again where it activates. You really have to be careful about how it starts to transition. I pretty much never like to get my things, like my joints, completely locked out. I always like to have a little bit of bend. It still feels straight, but just that little bit of bend gives it a little bit more weight, and then it gives you some place to go, so you don't all of a sudden feel like there's an elbow, a new line introduced quickly. And then of course you have to massage that over on a per frame basis. The other thing that makes that stand out is if you look at the hand that's on the ground there, when that bends, I'm not getting a sense of any real pressure change in the fingers. When I look closely, I do see that you are animating the hand there, which is great. It's good that you're paying attention to that stuff. But the amount doesn't feel like it supports what that move is. Okay? So I feel it there. I feel it again here, where all through this move, that arm is completely locked, and then for whatever reason, just on frame 68 there, it decides to spring back to life. Okay. So here you feel it like lock up again, but there's no real reason why. Playing with your shoulders to help soften that. If you have any extends on this, you can play with that so that you can maintain your bend. For each pose that I'm in, I might adjust subtly like the length of the arm to help suit my needs for that particular pose. Okay. Almost every cartoon character has give this way or that way. Like if you look at Bugs Bunny and his arm's by his side versus when his arm goes up against the wall and he leans to do the like, what's up, Doc? Like that arm gets pretty long. So don't be afraid to let it to adjust a little bit as long as it's not so noticeable. Okay. Then I feel it again in here where the legs, you go from this intense bend and then all of a sudden the leg locks up and then it just stretches. All right, so I could feel that stretch. I would want to, again, increase, like as he's stretching, feel the bend in the legs reaching to, straight there. Okay, you don't want to feel like all of a sudden it's elastic, because once it becomes elastic like that, then you don't really believe that there's weight in there to support that character. Okay, so again, this might be an instance where if this pose, being on his tippy toes, was important to me, I might have reversed engineered this to pull it back down a little bit so that I can have a little bit more being on my tippy toes to have a little bit of that, maintain a little bit of that leg length, and maybe that would have required the tape deck to be a little higher or something to help support that. Okay, or lower, probably lower. Okay, so again, I feel like whenever I'm working out a shot, as I start posing things in, I see that like, all right, I need to adjust the staging a little bit here, so I can make all these things feel natural. Okay. That might just be because I'm a horrible animator, but that's what I do. Okay. So again, arms locking, popping. Another big thing, when that thing pops back, there's no reaction at all in his face. Like if I went like that to something and I was that close, I might have some sort of strong wince. Okay, even when it stops, but I can see like he's reacting with his thought there, but there's also just like a reflexive reaction if something pops back at you that I would have included. Okay, I definitely feel in the, perhaps mechanics-wise, like actual physicality of motion, one of the bigger things to me is this spot here, when his body loses its screen right to left motion and it sort of just dies there, and the leg plants back, so he feels off balance, and then he leans forward. So now I feel like he would fall, where it's only because of how far back the legs are and then how everything kind of hits a wall here and sort of rotates on itself. You could have had the character put out the leg in front and put another one down and then continue to drift it a little bit, right? But the fact that it sort of like landed too far behind, and then you pick up this other leg and put it behind, it feels stuck. You didn't necessarily feel an element of the body slowing it down. The body was already so far out in front of the leg here. So I probably would have done an extra step there to really help sell that. The arm coming down, you could feel, again, the IK, the swinging. it, you know, I think it's something that I think is usually done wrong is like if you are swinging it and it's loose, it is being generated by the weight at the end of your arm. So it's not just like being driven by up here, but there is that like fall catch that you got to get, that pendulum kind of feeling there, where I feel like its settle time is really sticky, like it really kind of goes like where you can just felt the weight fall and catch itself a little smoother and not hit so many walls in there. And the elbow buckling through there doesn't help either, so you really feel that IK feeling. So I would have switched from IK here. On this frame, I might have switched to FK, and then from that point on, just had an FK arm. Okay. Again, we talked about this before. If you're doing the planet, you have these really long arms. You could have had a nice clear silhouette here. It would have been a lot stronger. You equally would have got a nice little triangle in here to help frame that. Okay. Other little details, you know, like I feel like we're not using enough the shoulders enough. Like it feels like they're moving out of the way of the arm rather than feeling the weight as it transfers, supporting the body. It feels like you're moving it so that the arm doesn't pop. Follow through on the antennas. I feel like they're pretty locked there, which may not be totally bad, but when he zips up to here, you really feel like they change shape in a big way, and then they snap back. So it feels like you're treating them like super draggy, which suggests that they have more give, but then you're not consistent with that. Equally, they're not dragging properly. Okay, so here you want to make sure that they're pulling from someplace but not going past where they were. So if we go from here to here, that's fine. You can see that on this frame it's at this point and it's leaving that point, right? But then here it starts sucking back, right? So I'm just marking where it started from. And then bam, here it all of a sudden shoots all the way back, right? So that's suggesting that it's not dragging, it's going past, so it's moving on its own. So it no longer feels like it's a drag element. At the same time, it's not pointing down the arc. So you have this thrust here, those elements dragging behind should sort of honor some of that thrust, right? Like they were moving from this place before, right, and they're going to go up there. So I would try to make sure that, like, even though the body is doing that, they're still sharing some of what they were doing before. Okay, but instead you have them pointing up, so they're going against the grain altogether. So in here they feel like they hit stiff boards, and they're just elevating with it, and then they just come back to life there. Okay. And then you're quick and zippy with that, but then when you do your push, there's no follow through at all on them. Okay. I would equally be putting follow through on these little flaps. I'd be putting follow through on that. Okay. Those little details, they need some love, right? Otherwise, they illuminate the fact that it's stiff. All right. And if you didn't want to animate them, then I would do something to change the design where you keep it tight against the head or lose that thing, right? But if it's in there, you got to budget your time correctly to account for all that stuff. Okay? Something I forgot to mention before, when he presses that button, when that thing comes out, he has no reaction to it whatsoever. It's little details like that that make the character feel connected to the environment that they're in. It's when they react, whether it's reflexive or through a thought process. You got to make sure that anything that happens, for every action there's a reaction, right? No matter how big or small. Okay? So, in a nutshell, geez, we're at 40 minutes. Sorry. Thank you for listening to all this. I think you got some good stuff in there, but I think all those little things that I gave you is what can step that up to, a higher level there and really separate, a good piece from a great piece. And it all really boils down to the story there, making sure that you're consistent with the acting, what is the character's drive in there, and all the little particulars around that. Okay?